You are listening to Mind Over Me, the mental wellness podcast with me, Scott Carter. I am a licensed therapist and someone who is very mindful and aware of the decline in our collective mental health. I created this podcast so that we could have more direct and honest conversations about difficult topics and difficult issues. It's my goal to have honest but direct conversations that we need to have that are necessary. It's also my goal to give my listeners the information that they need in order to find their own mental health and mental wellness. This is where you will find the information that you need to be your own healer. And of course, all of this is based on years of clinical experience and expertise. Thank you for being here. Let's dive right in. And we are back. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for being here. This, of course, is Mind Over Me. I know most of us out there are struggling. We're just having a hard time. We're just having a hard time. I'm doing personally. I can honestly say that for the most part, I'm doing pretty good. In spite of issues and struggles, I remain optimistic. I do. I remain optimistic about the future. I remain optimistic about my future. I'm recording this the day after Black Friday. Had Thanksgiving. Whenever you're listening to this, I hope you like Thanksgiving. I personally like Thanksgiving. I'm a food person. I love turkey. This Thanksgiving, we had turkey and ham. I love ham too. I also love pie. I'm a big pie lover. I love pie. So I was able to indulge in some good pumpkin and pecan pie. It's really quite tasty. I've also been a little bit sick, but I'm feeling better. Have been feeling better. A week ago, man, I was sick as a dog. I had fortunately pre-recorded the episodes that I needed to, and so I've been continuing to drop episodes of this podcast most Mondays. Again, if you're new here, one of the things that I'm currently working on is being more disciplined. That is my current thing. Like building and increasing my discipline. I really believe success really is the product of discipline and getting outside your comfort zones. Today's topic is an important one. I believe that this is a very, very important episode, a very important topic to discuss, maybe something that not nearly enough people are talking about directly. It can be a difficult topic because being honest with ourselves in this regard can be very, very difficult. But this podcast is really, really about being very, very, very honest with ourselves. Because, I'm going to be really honest. When it comes to being a therapist, you're always going to get those clients who want to go to therapy because they want to complain about everybody else. They want to blame everybody else for their problems. Nothing is their fault. And they just want to externalize everything. That will never, ever, ever, ever take you to a place of mental wellness. I mean, never. It never works. I've had to be kind of direct and kind of clear with certain clients about, like, hey, if you're looking for someone to complain to or looking for someone else to blame, I'm not going to be a good therapist for you, right? This place is about personal accountability. So that's true for this podcast. This is a place of radical honesty, being honest with ourselves, but also radical accountability. You are the one who is responsible for your own experiences in life, how you experience life, how you approach life. That's your job. So for those who just want to externalize everything and they want to say, oh, my mental health will improve when my external circumstances improve, when other people change, or if I live in a different place, or if I have different roommates, whatever the case may be. Sorry, folks, it doesn't work that way. Good mental health just does not work that way. And frankly, that is an immature idea. That's an immature attitude that is disconnected from reality. But today's episode really is about how we don't have enough adults walking around anymore, because I think I'm a strong believer that a big reason or a major cause of our collective crash in mental health has to do with a lot of things, but one of those big factors is just the lack of maturity. Instead of seeing life through the lens of being an adult, I think people are going into adulthood seeing still through the lens of a child, seeing things through childish, right, perspectives. As a result, everything is hard, right? Everything's really difficult, and this also speaks to a greater concern that I'm having with teenagers and young people. So I do a lot of work with teens. I always have. I mean, it's sort of where my roots are at on a mental health level. I started working with troubled teenagers back in 2001, so I've been doing this almost 25 years. And I've worked with families, worked with young people, and I continue to do so. Frankly, I'm just far more concerned about our kiddos right now than I ever have been. I mean, after 25 years, I'm seriously so concerned about them right now. It's like if there's anything that keeps me up at night, it's that I see how kids are doing, and I'm just frankly alarmed. More and more, I've been seeing teenagers who are not growing up. They're not maturing. They're giving up on life before it's even starting. I was putting a few finishing touches on an article on my website. By the time this podcast lands, I doubt the article will be published, less likely, but it'll be up soon, about how kids just want to stay home. And it goes beyond that. It's not just that they want to stay home where their comfort zone is. Comfort zone's bad for you, side note. Get outside your comfort zones. But it's not just that home is their comfort zone and they want to stay in their comfort zone. It's that every other aspect of their life is just in a state of decay. They have no identity. They have no goals. They have no ambition. They have no hope for the future. They don't have any friends. They're not exercising. They don't have activities. They spend every possible moment they can in their rooms staring at their phones. I've noticed with a lot of these kids too, with a lot of these teenagers, that so many of them aren't even doing basic hygiene anymore. Like getting them to do hygiene is even a fight. Some of them will go a week without showering. It's literally as though like every part of their life is literally falling apart. A lot of them will tell me like, well, there's no hope for a positive future. I disagree. I completely disagree with that notion. I think that is an idea that's propagated online. I think that's an idea that's propagated through social media. And certainly, right, if you believe that there's no hope for a positive future and you just give up on life, then you are guaranteeing that that's the future that you're going to experience. Because ultimately, human beings are extremely resilient, just by nature. They're extremely resourceful when they apply themselves, especially when they work together. They become resilient, they become resourceful, and they can help create change. Ultimately, we are the ones who determine how things pan out, more so than other external forces. I think it's so imperative, but again, this is an adult attitude, that we have a lot more ability to influence how things turn out for us than, if we externalize that, right, that center of control, right? If I hand over all my power to some external force, like a government, for example, then yeah, it's going to be a disaster. So this episode is kind of about examining our own maturity. I'm going to give some examples of what I've come to believe are like adult attitudes versus childish attitudes, or adult beliefs versus childish beliefs. And of course, it's our job to stop and reflect. Okay, this is not a blame game. This is not about feeling bad about ourselves. Again, so if we're going to talk about adult attitudes versus childish ones, if we look at things through the eyes of a child, right, through a childish lens, we might think, oh, I'm being blamed, I'm being shamed, I'm being put down, I'm being insulted, I feel offended. Whereas an adult attitude is like, this is important feedback. I have a lot to learn from this. This is a great example, or a great opportunity, for me to examine my own life and get really, really honest with myself because there's an opportunity for growth here, right? That would be an example of a childish versus adult way of looking at things. In recent days, I've made some TikTok videos about this. Like one of them was about how young men, especially, like it's especially the young men who have the Peter Pan syndrome, they're not growing up. They're not, right? I mean, it's like they might go to school, they fight tooth and nail to stay home so they can stare at their phones. They might be 16, 17 years old, but they function closer to like they're 13, maybe 14 years old. They just want to stay young. They just want to stay home forever. They just want to avoid life forever. Anyways, I made a video about that basic topic. And somebody in the comments section, young man, appeared to be young man, commented with, well, it's not required to grow up anymore. And I was like, um, says who? Where on earth would you get that idea? Yes, it is. It is always required to grow up. Just because there are more things that will enable your childishness does not negate the necessity to grow up and be mature. But I see these young men, right, where it's like, as far as they're concerned, they're just going to stay in the parents' basement maybe for time and all eternity, right? And the trouble with that, obviously, is that the parents aren't going to live forever. And no one wants to take care of a 45-year-old whose parents have suddenly, right, dipped. Because, yes, it is possible to get that old and still not really know how to take care of yourself. Because, like, being an adult means that responsibility, how you handle responsibility. But again, I'm seeing this collectively so much across the board. Like a failure to grow up, a failure to mature. I'm, of course, working to recognize this within myself first. For example, I had always seen, up until recently, struggles as a bad thing. Why do I always struggle? Why is everything so hard? I had to get really honest with myself. I was like, dude, that's how life is. Life is hard. Life is a struggle. That's how it's supposed to be. That's normal. How you take your punches is where it counts, bud. Like, I gave this talk to myself where I'm like, well, guess what? That's where strength comes from. You can't become strong without struggles. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in some previous episodes at some point, weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, where I was just talking about how I'm changing my paradigm about struggles. Like, struggles are normal. Life is hard. That's normal. Struggles is how you get better. Struggles is how you get stronger. Period. That's how it goes. And without struggles, you cannot be strong, right? And it's just, I've been fostering a childish attitude about life struggles for decades, I'm old. I'm going on 50, y'all. I'm 47. I just turned 47. And it's like, dude, grow up, improve your attitude. You need to grow up and improve and mature your attitude about life struggles. So what I'd like to do generally is kind of do a compare and contrast. Do public schools still do that? Like, let's do a compare and contrast. Is this part of critical thinking exercise? I doubt that schools still have their students do that because of how little critical thinking there appears to be this day anyway, or these days. Anyways, could be just my opinion, but there does appear to be a lack of critical thinking these days. But so what I've done is I've jotted down a few notes about a childish attitude versus adult attitude, how adults look at life, or how children look at life versus adults. I'm going to get to that in a second, but I wanted to note this important thing just about adulthood and being an adult. Like, what does it mean to be an adult? What is the definition? Because to me, it's a psychological thing. Like, people these days will think like, well, when you turn 18, you're an adult. Ta-da! Like, one day you're, 1 second you're 17, and the next second you're 18, and poof. Just like that, you're an adult, right? You can vote, you can get a tattoo, and those things make you an adult. I would argue that being an adult is a psychological thing. When certain psychological things change in your mind, that's when you become an adult. And for those of us who have been adulting, We can all recognize that when you become an adult, so to speak, one of the things that is very surprising and somewhat shocking is how there are, it's like, how are there so many adults, you find yourself asking, that still behave like children, right? It's like, how are adults acting and behaving this way? It can be a little bit shocking. And this is just like one of the many life lessons that I try to communicate to teenagers is like, let go of your expectation that when you become an adult, that people are going to act like adults. It's a psychological thing. There's a psychological difference between adults and children. I even used to think that there was like kind of a normalization of narcissism, like people were just becoming more and more narcissistic. I'm more convinced that people just haven't grown up. If you still have the emotional maturity of a 10-year-old, for example, or like a 12, 13, 14-year-old, you're going to come across as very narcissistic when in fact the case may be just the person just hasn't grown up. Like our culture, our society doesn't necessarily put people in a position to grow up necessarily. Unfortunately, I do believe our culture and our society does too much to enable these bad behaviors. And again, I think that's why some people think like, well, you don't have to grow up. Society will just deal with you, make exceptions for you, make accommodations for you. Okay, I suppose, but you still are required to grow up. Because until you do, you're instead of contributing to the greater good, you're going to contribute to the greater detriment. What kind of person do you want to be? Right? So to me, that's an adult question. Like kids aren't accustomed to thinking, what kind of person do I want to grow up to be? Now, some of them might, some of them do, but it may be the exception rather than the rule. And if you've ever taken pause to ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? Well, congratulations, you're now thinking like an adult. But I want to get into some of these notes on childish views or childish attitudes versus adult attitudes. Now, again, as I go through these, I'm going to challenge you to look at yourself, okay? Because I'm going to go over the first one. Actually, this will fit right in. This will segue, dovetail perfectly. Number one is an external versus internal locus of control. Now, earlier I was talking about externalizing things, putting blame on external things, external factors, people, for the reasons why your life is the way that it is. Okay, this is the difference between external versus an internal locus of control. External meaning you're just giving away your life and your power to external forces. You're not in charge. You're just like letting things be in charge or directing how things go for you in life. Versus people with an internal locus of control where they reflect and go, I get to choose what I do. I get to make my own choices. I get to choose how I interpret events or respond to certain events. And in so doing, my experience with life changes. So I actually do my therapy sessions out of my home. I have a den like right off the entrance, and so it's like my therapy room. It's where I work. So my clients come to my home. It saves me so much money. So much money. It just makes life more affordable, and there's just less pressure to just like kill myself over work. Anyways, I was with a young man recently because again he comes to my home and he's like 21. He's just recently turned 21, and he goes, "Man, you are so lucky to have this place." I was like, "Dude, luck has absolutely nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with the set of choices that I've made." But again, this is a childish way of seeing the world. Okay, that you're lucky or you're unlucky. That good things happen to you or they don't. Right? You're not in control of that. They either happen or they don't. That's a childish way of looking at things. Whereas an adult way of looking at things is I have the ability to make different choices and thereby influence certain outcomes. The next one is very important, it's very similar, along the same lines, okay? Blame versus accountability. Okay, it's a childish attitude to just place blame on anything and everything, and it's not my fault in it. And like there's some evil, sneaky, nefarious villain out there who's destroying my life. And damn that person, I can't believe they would do that to me. It's like, But when you're an adult, you just like the mask gets ripped away, and you have that moment of honesty, and you're like, the only person ruining my life is me at this point. And so, yeah, blame versus accountability. As long as people continue to blame anything and everything other than themselves for what happens to them, right? That's being childish versus being an adult. As a side note, this list is in no way intended to be comprehensive. These are just some examples. I mean, I could probably write a whole book about this topic. I don't want to. I doubt anybody would read it. I'm already trying to write two different books currently that I'm very actually kind of excited about. I actually love them both. But that's neither here nor there. Let's move on. Next one on my notes is instant gratification. That's childish versus long term reward. Okay. As children, it's what I just want what I want, and I want it right now. And I want what feels good right now. I'm going to eat my cake right now instead of saving it for later. I'm going to sacrifice my long term well being in order to get what I want right now. This is actually a brain function. They've done studies in psychology that have shown that some people have this executive functioning, some people don't. Children can learn it, they can improve with it. But we live in a society, we live in a culture of instant gratification. Getting what you want when you want it right now, right? Like, I just give it to me right now. Without thinking about long-term consequences. And so what you'll often hear is that people are like, why don't I have the good things? And it's like, well, because you have to make sacrifices to get the good things. You have to sacrifice what feels good right now compared to what is going to be helpful to you later. So it's childish to think, what do I want right now versus when you're an adult, it's what sacrifices do I need to make day in and day out in order to get what I want later, which also falls under the umbrella of discipline, which is one thing that I'm talking about all the time because this is something that I've personally struggled with is discipline. The next one, very similar, along the same lines. This is kind of a dovetail, right? Supposed to be a seamless segue. Wants versus needs. I did a whole separate episode on wants versus needs. Go check it out if you want more detail on this. I feel like this is an extremely important topic. It might seem dry, but important things can be a little bit dry. Whatever. Go listen to it anyways because people are getting their wants and their needs all screwed up. It's what me, what I want, what I want, what I want. And all of that is rooted in creating a hunger that you can't satiate, like greed, right? It's never enough. It's like no matter how much you take or consume or whatever, it's just never enough. You just need more and more and more and more. That's what happens when you live a life of wants. Versus when you're an adult, you feel a lot more satisfied, a lot more well-rounded, and just a lot more content when you meet your needs. The next one also, I think, dovetails nicely. Selfishness versus selflessness. Okay, as children, right? Me. What about me? What about me? What about me? Me. Okay, and some people never graduate from that. They never move on from the me. Adults will realize that they're not the only person in the room. They're not the main character. They're not the center of everybody else's universe. They've got to work together. And so adults have a tendency to contribute to what they believe is a greater good. They tend to be more selfless versus selfish. This might sound a little harsh, but here it goes. Adults have figured out how to get over themselves. And then finally, just again, this list is not intended to be comprehensive whatsoever. But this next one I think is really important because it kind of ties into what I was talking about earlier. It's avoidance versus confrontation and or acceptance. So when you have a childish attitude, it's like you avoid problems, you avoid issues, you avoid life, you avoid responsibility because you have a responsibility to fix your life. You have a responsibility to fix yourself. You have a responsibility to learn things like discipline and build your self-discipline, for example. That's just one example. You have a responsibility to do those things, okay? But when you have a childish attitude or you have a childish approach to life, you're just going to have a tendency towards avoidance. You're going to avoid responsibility, and responsibility is around every corner. And maybe I should have made a separate bullet point, but it's like, and this is related, but it's like I can often tell when someone has a more childish attitude when they're always saying, "Oh, but that's hard." Right? They don't want to do hard things, but whereas adults have accepted that life is hard and that life is going to be hard no matter what you do. It's easy to make bad food and eating choices. That's easy. That's an easy choice. But then later, it's hard to deal with health problems. It's easy to stay home and stare at your phone. But then later, it's going to be very, very hard to figure out how to become a functioning adult when life requires you to do it. Because eventually it will. And that will be very, very, very difficult. That'll be very hard. So again, the childish attitude is, yes, I recognize that life requires responsibilities, but I'm just avoiding them. I don't want to deal with it, so I'm just not going to. Whereas adults realize like it's best to deal with it now in the best way that you can. Confront and accept these issues, take them head on, accept that life is going to be hard no matter what you do. And so again, once again, we all just have a responsibility to have these honest conversations with ourselves. That's one of our responsibilities. Do you avoid it? Or do you accept it? Do you accept that I must confront these things in my own life? It's never going to go away. It's only going to get worse. Like this is how you practice acceptance, by the way. This is the adult thing to do. They're never going to go away. The more I avoid it, the more difficult it's going to be. And in so doing, we also want to return back to the big three. I'm not exactly sure what to call them. For now, I'm going to call them the big three: insight, awareness, and conscientiousness. Practice your insight, practice your awareness, be very conscientious about the process. That's what adults do. That's adult thinking. That's an adult attitude. Okay, so there's just some examples on, how people approach life when from a childish perspective versus an adult one. And we're going to wrap this episode up, as usual, with some shadow work journal prompts. If you're new here, if this is your first episode, I have been doing my best lately, at least in the second season of this podcast, to include journal prompts for shadow work. If you're not familiar with shadow work, it is a type of, it's a practice to build our insight, to rewire our subconscious, to get to the core of our issues and take control of our life. Shadow work can be difficult and scary. My shadow work is not for wimps. So I do shadow work journal prompts with each episode as it pertains to the topic of the show. If you're going to do the shadow work journal prompts, I highly recommend setting aside a separate journal or notebook for your personal shadow work. That's how you're going to get the most benefit out of it. And of course, I need to provide a brief disclaimer. I'm a therapist. I'm not your therapist. Please use your own discretion when doing shadow work. Some people, when it comes to their individual minds, shadow work can be highly distressing. So, and can trigger. Sometimes shadow work can trigger things like trauma. So use your own discretion and work with a good therapist if you are able to do so. So without further delay, here are your shadow work journal prompts for this particular topic. These are going to be some good ones. These are good ones, but I think these are also going to be some tough ones. Number 1, do I see myself more as a child or more of an adult? Number 2, what things have shaped me in this way? Right? What things have made you to be more like a child versus more of an adult? Like it could be parenting or how things went at school or whatever, right? Sometimes kids have schools or parents or families that protect them from doing difficult things or real life consequences, and that can keep them stuck in a childish place. Number 3, how do I feel when I think about the possibility of just being an adult grown child? Do I feel defensive? Do I feel hurt? Do I feel angry? How do I feel? Do I feel empowered? Do I feel optimistic? The next one, number 4, what are those feelings rooted in? Why am I experiencing those individual feelings? Okay, so a lot of people may feel a little bit defensive or hurt when it comes to confronting or addressing some of the childishness in their own life. And so we want to kind of confront, like, what's behind those hurt feelings? What are they helping you? Are they valid? Are they invalid? What's going on? Again, the more insight that you build around these things, the better you're going to do. And finally, number 5. Number 5. I'm trying to think. What was number 5? Oh, yeah. Number 5 is what specific things should I work on in order to adopt a more adult type of attitude, perspective, or thinking in my life? Number 6, what am I avoiding? What responsibilities am I avoiding? Let's make it specifically, what responsibilities am I avoiding? Okay. And maybe it's the responsibilities around work or whatever, finances, diet, exercise. What responsibilities do I have that I'm avoiding? If your perspective gets changed properly, you should find it easy. The motivation to do something different should come easily. Okay, there you have it. Let's wrap this up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Help me grow my audience. Check out my website, saltcitycounseling.com. You can also follow me on X. That is going to be in the show notes. Sooner or later I'll memorize it and I'll just say it on the episode. Be sure to share the episode. Be sure to tell your friends, okay? And I'm going to sign out by saying you must do hard things. And hopefully maybe after today's episode, that sign-off has a little bit more clarity to it. So, okay, get after it. You must do hard things. Okay, take care. See you next time.